Apply. For centuries, castles have stood as giants of stone, silent witnesses to history's darkest chapters. Behind their towering walls and iron gates, secrets linger. Apply. Some speak of shadows that move when no one's there. Others whisper of rooms sealed for centuries, hiding truths that time itself tried to erase. Apply. Are these legends nothing more than ghost stories, or do the walls themselves guard hidden realities waiting to be uncovered? Tonight, we step into the heart of those mysteries. Apply, where each corridor tells a tale and every creaking door dares you to believe the unbelievable. For as long as castles have towered over valleys and rivers, Apply. Whispers of hidden chambers and secret tunnels have echoed through their stone corridors. These were not simply the products of imagination. They were lifelines, escape routes, Apply, and traps woven into the very bones of medieval architecture. Imagine standing in the great hall of a centuries-old fortress. Beneath the flicker of torchlight, the walls appear solid, Apply, unmovable, eternal. But what if one of those stones concealed a passage, a door that could slide open with just the right touch, leading to a hidden world behind the facade? Apply. In castle after castle across Europe and beyond, archaeologists have stumbled upon rooms that were never recorded, corridors that appear to lead nowhere, Apply, and tunnels that stretch for miles beneath the earth. These hidden features were not ornamental, they were born out of fear, strategy, and survival. Apply. Rulers of the past knew their power drew enemies. Betrayal was as common as loyalty, and in a world of constant siege and sudden attack, Apply. The difference between life and death often lay in a secret escape known only to a handful of trusted souls. Some of these tunnels led to forests or rivers, Apply. Discreet exits carved so lords and their families could vanish under the cover of night. Others were designed for the opposite purpose, for spies, assassins, Apply, or entire armies to slip silently inside the fortress walls. One wrong footstep in the castle courtyard could reveal an iron grate or a trapdoor leading into darkness. What was beneath? Apply. For some, it was freedom. For others, it was doom. But not all hidden chambers served military purposes. Many were built to conceal wealth, gold coins, jewels, Apply, and sacred relics too valuable to leave exposed. In Poland's Kiev Castle, Apply, a labyrinth of secret tunnels still fuels speculation of Nazi gold and hidden treasures buried during World War II. In Scotland, Apply, Stirling Castle is said to hide chambers once filled with royal treasures that have never been found. These rooms, shrouded in secrecy, Apply, remain as tantalizing puzzles for historians and treasure hunters alike. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of these concealed places is how deliberately they were hidden. Apply. Narrow staircases built behind fireplaces, doors disguised as part of the wall. Apply. Tunnels accessible only by lifting a loose stone in the floor. Architects and masons were sworn to silence, for a secret is only as strong as the one who keeps it. Centuries later, Apply, when modern explorers push open a door sealed by rubble or earth, they are stepping into spaces that no human eyes have seen in hundreds of years. The air is thick, Apply, the silence suffocating, and every shadow feels alive with the weight of forgotten stories. Legends, of course, have filled the voids where history is silent. Applied. Locals speak of kings who never truly died, but who sleep in secret chambers beneath their castles, waiting for the day they will rise again. Apply. There are tales of maidens bricked alive within hidden rooms, their restless spirits now wandering the halls above. Some castles have long corridors that lead to nowhere. Apply, ending in sudden drops or walled off stone, as if builders abandoned them halfway. Or perhaps, as some suggest, they were intentionally sealed to bury a truth no one was meant to find. Apply. Even today, technology continues to peel back these mysteries. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed voids beneath famous castles. Apply, suggesting undiscovered tunnels still await their reveal. In Prague Castle, investigators uncovered hidden chambers that had been sealed for centuries. Apply, leaving researchers puzzled about why they were locked away in the first place. Was it to protect or to hide something too dangerous for the world to know? Apply. The allure of secret chambers and tunnels is undeniable. They remind us that history is not fixed, it is layered, with stories tucked behind walls and buried beneath stones. Apply. Each discovery turns rumor into reality, legend into fact. And as long as castles continue to stand, their shadows will whisper of hidden doors waiting to be opened. Apply, and mysteries that still lie just beyond the reach of torchlight. Of all the tales that linger inside castle walls, none stir the imagination more than those of ghostly legends. Apply. Walk through a castle at night when the last footsteps of tourists have faded and the torches no longer burn and the air itself seems to change. It grows colder, heavier. Apply, as if the stones themselves breathe with secrets too ancient to silence. For centuries, visitors, guards, and royals alike have whispered of figures in white drifting through corridors. Apply, of screams echoing from dungeons long emptied, of shadows that move even when no light remains. These are not merely stories told for entertainment. Apply, they are part of the very identity of castles, binding history and myth into one haunting tapestry. Take the White Lady, for example. Apply, a figure who appears in countless European castles under different names, yet always dressed in pale garments, her presence both sorrowful and chilling. At Hohenzollern Castle in Germany, Apply, legend speaks of a mysterious woman who roams the hallways, seen most often before moments of tragedy in the royal family. Witnesses describe her not with terror, Apply, but with a sense of sadness, as though her spirit is forever tied to a fate she cannot escape. What binds her here? A broken promise, a life cut short, Apply. Or is she warning those who dwell within the castle walls of what is yet to come? Then there is the Tower of London, a fortress dripping with blood and betrayal, Apply, where history itself seems to breathe in the form of restless souls. Perhaps the most famous is Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry V, executed within its grounds. Apply. Countless visitors and guards over the centuries claim to have seen her wandering the corridors, sometimes clutching her head, Apply, other times simply gliding silently across the chapel where she was laid to rest. Her story is one of ambition, love, Apply, and death, and her ghostly presence feels like a reminder of the cruelty and intrigue that shaped the very stones of that tower. But not all spirits are noble. Apply. Some are said to be vengeful, their appearances marked by fear rather than sorrow. In Leap Castle in Ireland, long regarded as one of the most haunted castles in the world, Apply, whispers of the Amenal send shivers down spines. Described as a small, dark creature with a decaying face and an overpowering stench of death, Apply, it is believed to be a manifestation of violence and betrayal that occurred within the castle centuries ago. Stories of its appearance are often linked with doom or disaster, Apply, leaving those who encounter it shaken for life. Legends also speak of phantom armies, entire battalions of warriors marching across drawbridges or through courtyards, Apply, their footsteps echoing in perfect unison, though no soldiers remain. In certain castles across Scotland and Wales, locals insist they hear the clashing of swords, the cries of men, Apply, and the distant sound of horns on foggy nights, the echoes of battles that ended long ago, replaying themselves like a ghostly performance no living soul can interrupt, Apply. What makes these tales endure is not simply their frightful details, but their persistence across generations. Apply. Guards who swore loyalty to kings and queens spoke of figures that vanished through locked doors. Servants whispered of doors opening and closing on their own. Apply. Modern visitors capture strange lights on their cameras or leave swearing they felt an invisible hand brush against their arm. Science offers explanations, drafts, echoes, Apply the power of suggestion. And yet when you stand in a hall where a queen once wept or a prisoner once begged for mercy, the boundary between belief and disbelief grows thin. Apply. Each ghostly legend is more than a tale. It is a bridge between past and present. Apply. They remind us that castles were not only homes and fortresses, but also stages for human drama of ambition, betrayal, love, and death. Apply. Perhaps these spirits are nothing more than our minds conjuring the weight of history. Or perhaps they are truly there, forever bound to the stones that witnessed their final moments. Apply. And as long as the castles stand, the ghosts will continue to walk, whispering stories to those who dare to listen in the silence of the night. Apply. Across the dim corridors and vaulted chambers of old castles, whispers speak not only of spirits and shadows, Apply, but of objects said to carry a curse so powerful it could shape the fate of anyone who possessed them. These were no ordinary relics. They were crowns, swords, mirrors, and thrones, Apply, steeped in the ambition and blood of those who once held them. To gaze upon these objects today is to see artifacts of history. But to those who live within the walls, Apply, they were symbols of power, yet laced with fear, for it was believed they carried with them a punishment that no mortal could escape. In some castles, Apply, the very throne on which a king once sat was said to be cursed. Legends tell of rulers who ascended proudly only to meet untimely death soon after. At Chillingham Castle in England, Apply, stories circulate about an ancient chair that visitors are warned never to sit in. Those who dared were said to suffer accidents or misfortune in the days that followed. Apply. It was as though the wood itself remembered the weight of those who schemed, ruled, and fell passing judgment on anyone foolish enough to tempt fate. Weapons, too, Apply, carried these dark reputations. A blade might have been forged in triumph, but once it drew blood unjustly, its legacy was tainted forever. Apply. Some say cursed swords would drive their owners to madness or betray them in battle. In Central European castles, Apply, knights told of blades that could not be sheathed until they tasted blood, dragging their masters into endless cycles of violence. The weapon, once an instrument of glory, Apply, became a tormentor, whispering to its wielder with each gleam in the torchlight. Jewels and crowns glittered with similar danger. The Koh-i-Noor diamond, Apply, though not tied to one single castle, is a jewel long surrounded by legends of misfortune. Every male ruler who wore it was said to fall from power, often violently. Apply. It is no wonder that when the diamond eventually found its way in the British crown, it was placed only in the coronets of queens, as if to shield kings from its wrath. Apply. In castles across Europe, other gems carried reputations just as dark, believed to curse families with ruin if removed from their hidden vaults. Apply. Even the most ordinary objects could take on sinister reputations when entwined with tragedy. Apply. Mirrors that once hung in royal bedchambers were said to trap the souls of those who gazed into them during their final breaths. Apply. Visitors to certain castles report that these mirrors grow clouded or distort reflections as though carrying memories of centuries past. In some places, apply. Portraits of long dead nobles are said to hold similar power, their painted eyes following intruders with silent accusation. Apply. What makes these cursed objects so compelling is the way they blur the line between superstition and history. Many of the legends grew from real events, rulers dying young. Apply. Families torn apart by betrayal, dynasties crumbling under the weight of ambition. In times when people sought explanations for tragedy, it was easier to believe that a throne, a crown, apply, or a sword was cursed than to admit that human greed and violence were the true causes. The curse became a way to pass blame to something greater, something beyond control, and yet apply. Even now, the allure of these objects lingers. Tourists flock to castles not only to marvel at the architecture, but to see the artifacts said to carry centuries of misfortune. Apply. Curators handle them with care, mindful of both preservation and the whispers that cling to them. Stories of sudden illness, of strange accidents after touching a relic. Apply continue to surface, feeding the belief that curses do not fade with time. Perhaps the true power of these objects lies not in magic, but in memory. Each thrown sword, apply, and jewel carries the imprint of the human lives bound to it, their triumphs, their betrayals, their blood. When you stand before them in the quiet of a castle hall, apply, it is easy to feel a shiver of recognition, as though the past is not truly past. These cursed objects remind us that history is not only written in books, apply, but etched into the very items that survived, heavy with stories that refused to die. Beneath the grand halls and towering battlements of castles, far from the light of day, apply, lay places where even the bravest dared not tread. The dungeons were not built to impress or inspire awe, but to terrify, to break the spirit. Apply, and to remind all who entered that power was not simply displayed in stone, it was enforced in darkness, cold, damp, and suffocating. Apply. These chambers were designed not for comfort, but for despair. The air was thick with the scent of decay. Apply, and the silence was broken only by the faint drip of water echoing off walls that had witnessed centuries of suffering. Apply. Those who were thrown into these pits often had little hope of leaving. Some dungeons were simples carved into the stone, where prisoners were left to shiver on the bare ground. Apply. Others were more sinister, crafted with cruel ingenuity to serve as instruments of torment. The infamous oubliette, apply, whose name comes from the French word for to forget, was nothing more than a deep, narrow shaft. Prisoners were lowered or thrown inside, left with no room to move. Apply, no light to guide them, and no means of escape. Their screams rose through the darkness, but within days, silence returned, leaving only bones to tell their story. Apply. Torture was not an invention of rumor. Devices such as racks, iron maidens, and spiked chairs were real tools of intimidation. Apply. Meant as much to terrify the living as to punish the accused. In castles across Europe, victims were stretched until their joints popped, locked into cages hung high from towers. Apply. Or pressed beneath crushing weights until their bodies gave way. The sounds of agony that once filled these rooms became part of the castle's legend. Apply, lingering long after the instruments themselves were removed. Even today, visitors who step into preserved torture chambers often speak of an almost tangible heaviness in the air. Apply, as though the stones themselves remember. But not every dungeon served only as a place of punishment. For rulers, they were also tools of control. Apply, nobles and political enemies were locked away, their absence as effective as their death. A rival could be silenced not by a sword, but by years in the shadows. Apply, stripped of dignity and forgotten by the world. Castles like the Tower of London became infamous not just for executions, but for the countless prisoners who vanished into their depths. Apply, some survived to tell their tales, recounting endless nights without food, the gnawing cold. Apply, and the constant knowledge that each dawn might bring the sound of footsteps and the clanging of keys, heralding either release or death. Apply. There is also the haunting truth that many dungeons were never meant to let anyone out. Their very design reflected the permanence of their purpose. Doors were thick and iron bound. Apply. Barred with bolts that rusted shut over the centuries. Narrow slits for air doubled as reminders of the freedom prisoners would never touch again. Apply. Some cells were so low and cramped that a man could neither stand nor lie down fully, forcing the body to twist in agony until time itself became unbearable. Apply. Legends grew around these chambers, tales of ghostly moans drifting up from beneath the earth, of footsteps echoing in abandoned corridors where no one had walked in centuries. Apply. In some castles, locals claim that the walls themselves groan at night as if the cries of the forgotten were absorbed into the stone. Apply. Skeptics dismiss these as tricks of acoustics or the imagination, yet few who enter such places deny the shiver that creeps along the spine, the sense that they are not alone. Apply. What makes the horrors of dungeons so enduring is not only the brutality that once filled them, but the way they reflect the darker truths of human history. Apply. Castles were symbols of power and majesty, yet beneath their splendor lay a grim reminder that authority was often built upon fear. The dungeons stand as silent witnesses to that truth. Apply, their shadows echoing with the pain of those whose names were never recorded, whose fates were sealed behind iron doors. And though centuries have passed, Apply. Those who venture into the depths of these castles still feel the weight of that history pressing down, as if time itself cannot wash away the echoes of suffering. Apply. Within the grand walls of castles, where banners once fluttered proudly and feasts echoed with laughter, betrayal often simmered beneath the surface. Apply. These strongholds were not only homes and fortresses, but stages where power and ambition clashed, sometimes with fatal consequences. Behind their stone facades, Apply. Alliances shifted like shadows, and the very people sworn to loyalty often became the hand that delivered death. Royal betrayal was not a rarity. Apply. It was an inevitability in a world where crowns were coveted and thrones were never truly secure. Imagine a king seated at a banquet table. Apply. Surrounded by courtiers smiling through clenched teeth, goblets of wine are raised, laughter fills the chamber, yet beneath the surface, poison waits in a cup. Apply, or a blade rests silently under a cloak. History tells us that some of the most dramatic downfalls were not fought on battlefields, Apply, but played out quietly in candlelit rooms within these castles. The intimate settings made betrayal all the more chilling. Death not at the hands of strangers, Apply, but from those once trusted as family, advisors, or lovers. In Scotland's Edinburgh Castle, the murder of David Rizzio, secretary to Mary, Queen of Scots, Apply, became one of the most infamous betrayals in royal history. Apply, Rizzio was dragged from Mary's side during dinner and stabbed more than 50 times by conspirators who sought to weaken the Queen's influence. The act was not just violence. Apply, it was political theater, carried out within the very heart of the castle, meant to send a message of fear and control. Centuries later, Apply visitors still claim to feel an icy presence in the rooms where the betrayal unfolded. The Tower of London, with its towering reputation for treachery, Apply became the backdrop for countless royal betrayals and murders. Apply, the princes in the tower, Edward V and his younger brother Richard, were lodged there under the supposed protection of their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Yet, Apply, they vanished without explanation, never to be seen again. Rumors spread that they had been murdered in secret, their bodies hidden within the castle walls. Apply. The question of their fate remains one of history's greatest mysteries, yet the tale embodies the darkest truth in castles. Family ties often meant nothing when power was at stake. Apply. Even love itself was not safe from betrayal. Kings and queens turned on their spouses, accusing them of treason or infidelity as convenient excuses to rid themselves of rivals. Apply. Anne Boleyn, wife of Henry V, lived in splendor within royal castles before being accused of crimes she likely never committed. Apply. Her execution was as much about ambition as it was about betrayal orchestrated to clear the way for the king's desires. Apply. To walk the halls where she once stood is to feel the weight of love corrupted by politics and loyalty shattered by greed. But betrayal did not always end in silence or secrecy. Apply. Some murders were dramatic, their violence meant to be seen, to shock, to terrify. In Prague Castle, Apply, nobles once hurled officials out of high windows in an act remembered as the defenestrations of Prague, a chilling blend of political defiance and brutal execution. Apply. The victims' screams must have echoed across the stone courtyard, a grim reminder that loyalty to a crown could vanish in an instant, replaced by vengeance. Apply. These acts of treachery left scars not only on the stones of the castles, but on the people who lived within them. Servants whispered of what they saw. Apply. Guards tried to forget what they heard, and generations retold the stories until they became inseparable from the identity of the fortress itself. To this day, Apply, castles carry the echoes of betrayal, their halls thick with the memory of conspiracies whispered in secret chambers and of the fatal footsteps that followed. Apply. Perhaps this is why castles feel so haunting. For all their beauty and majesty, they remind us that power breeds danger, and that loyalty within their walls could vanish in a heartbeat. Apply. The betrayals that unfolded there were not just stories of individuals, but reflections of a timeless truth in the pursuit of power. Even the closest bonds can be broken. Apply, and the most trusted faces can hide the deadliest intentions. The walls of ancient castles are more than just stone stacked upon stone, they are living records. Apply, scarred with the memory of war. Step close to them and you will see the faint grooves of sword strikes, the pock marks of cannon fire. Apply the blackened edges where flames once licked hungrily at their surfaces. Every mark tells a story of men who fought blood and fell within the shadow of those towers. Apply. These castles were not silent bystanders to history. They were the battlegrounds themselves, caught in the storm of conflict, standing tall while generations clashed at their feet. Apply. Imagine the chaos of a medieval siege. Arrows raining from high battlements, soldiers pushing heavy siege towers across muddy ground. Apply. The deafening crash of catapults hurling stones against fortified gates. Within the walls, families and defenders huddled together, listening to the pounding thuds that shook the earth. Apply. The walls bore the brunt of every strike, their strength tested again and again. Some held firm, others crumbled, but all carried the scars of the violence they endured. Apply. To walk beside them centuries later is to feel that energy, as though the stones themselves still hum with the echo of war drums. Some scars were not just physical, but symbolic. Apply. When conquerors claimed a castle, they often carved their mark into the walls, as if to overwrite the legacy of those who came before. Cove arms were replaced. Apply. Inscriptions were chiseled out. New banners were nailed into old stone. The walls became palimpsests of power. Apply. Each ruler trying to erase the past and write their dominance into the fortress itself. And yet no ruler could ever fully silence the stones. Beneath the new carvings, apply. The old wounds remained, whispering of battles that could not be forgotten. There are stories of walls that seemed indestructible, rising back from every attempt to bring them down. Apply. Cracked desk chevaliers in Syria, for example, withstood countless sieges, its fortifications so strong that it became a symbol of impenetrable defense. Yet even there, apply, you can still find cracks and broken sections that bear witness to the relentless assaults. In Europe, castles like Warwick, Windsor, and Carcassonne still carry their war wounds. Apply. Subtle and visible alike, like battle medals worn by survivors. These scars remind us that castles were not just homes of nobility, they were front lines where empires collided. Apply. But the walls also speak of the human cost of these wars. Imagine the soldiers who scaled ladders only to fall under boiling oil poured from above, their screams lost in the frenzy. Apply. Imagine the defenders who patched walls with their own bloodied hands, desperate to hold out one more day. Imagine the mothers and children sheltering inside. Apply. Pressing their palms against cold stone as if to draw strength from it. Each scar, each burn, each mark tells of lives lived and lost. Apply. Of sacrifices made in the hope that the walls would endure, even if the people inside did not. Today, when travelers run their fingers along those ancient surfaces, apply, they touch more than stone, they touch memory. They are touching the very fabric of history, hardened by fire, stained by blood, and kept alive by time. Apply. The walls remind us that though the wars have ended, their echoes still linger. They stand not only as monuments of survival, but as storytellers carrying tales of courage, loss, apply, and resilience across centuries. And so as the sun sets behind the towers and the shadows stretch across the earth, these walls remain silent, steadfast, and scarred. Apply. They continue to whisper of battles long past, urging us never to forget the cost of power and the resilience of those who dared to fight for it. Apply. If you felt the chill of history in these words, if the echoes of castles spoke to you tonight, then stay with us for more journeys into the mysteries of the past. Apply. Don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow seekers of history, and subscribe for the next chapter of Secrets Still Locked Within the Stones. Apply, because the past is never truly gone. It waits for us just beyond the walls.